Hey everyone, I'm feeling incredibly blessed to be able to interview the extraordinary Danielle Binks today. Danielle is the author of The Year the Maps Changed. She has also contributed to and helped edit the anthology Begin and Begin, which has won an ABR Book of the Year award for older children. Congratulations, Danielle.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and congratulations to you, published author in the background, that I'm going to get my hands on a copy of your book. I was just saying, from Rabble Books, which is a wonderful independent bookshop, I believe, near you. I'm going to be reaching out to Nat from Rabble Books and getting a copy of your book, and hopefully you can sign it for me. So I'm looking forward to reading it. Yay. Yes, thank you.
Your anthology was also shortlisted for a 2018 Inky Award. How cool is that?
Yeah. That is so cool. That's probably one of the highlights of my career so far, was the Inkies, very important book awards that young people vote on. The best.
I believe that Danielle is an inspirational author because of her moving and brilliantly written book, The Year the Maps Changed, which is about refugees in Australia. It is also about family, love, and friendship. Danielle, thank you for letting me grill you.
Thank you so much, I say before the grilling begins, but thank you in advance.
Are you ready to get started?
Yes.
A totally random question to get started. With all of your awesome work, you're in the public eye quite a lot. What's your most embarrassing or awkward moment while presenting that you're prepared to share with us?
That I'm prepared to share. Okay. So this kind of fits. It wasn't when I was presenting, but it was in my capacity as an advocate for youth literature. I think I'll share this one because even thinking about it, my hands start sweating and my heart starts pounding because it was so embarrassing. I was in the audience at a big author event. Patrick Ness, the author of the Chaos Walking series, was being interviewed on the stage, and I was in the audience and I was live tweeting his event. And at one point he answered a question by saying something to the effect of, and sometimes really rude people in the audience, like this young lady in front of me, are on their phone while I'm doing an event. And he was talking about me live tweeting what he was saying. And to make matters worse, I was sitting next to Andy Griffiths on one side, author of the Treehouse books, and my friend Adele on the other, who was also live tweeting, but she didn't get caught because I had a short kid in front of me so he could see me clearly, and Adele had a tall man in front of her and he couldn't see her. So that was humiliating that I got called out. But afterwards, I tweeted at Patrick Ness and explained I was just live tweeting your event for people that couldn't be there. And he kind of admitted that he was maybe a little bit jet lagged, having come from the UK. And he kind of said that's okay. But the fact that that happened, that it was a recorded session and I was sitting next to Andy Griffiths, who I think went down in his seat and away from me as it was happening, just to get away from the stink of me having been called out and shamed, publicly shamed by Patrick Ness. So I impart that story to you because, yeah, if anyone listening to this, if their hands are sweating, that was me in that moment. So you can have that story. That's all yours now. You're welcome.
You were promoting his event.
I know, and let me tell you as well, the moment it took my brain to realize what he was talking about was me, I think I was starting to put into the tweet, oh, he's calling somebody out for live tweeting. And just the stop that my brain did of having to look up and realize he was looking right at me. Yeah, that's recorded somewhere on some website, and I haven't had the guts to go and look back at it because, yeah, that's just one of the most humiliating points that I've ever experienced in the book world. So yeah, but it's all good. I tweeted at him afterwards and he semi-apologized by saying that he was a little bit grumpy after being jet lagged, which is fair enough, I think, but also not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's no excuse to be completely rude to people.
Especially not when you're sitting next to Andy Griffiths, who is just the most charming, wonderful of people, and he's literally slinking away from you. to get away from the embarrassment that is radiating off of you. Yeah, true story.
As well as being a talented writer, you are also a literary agent. What is it like being a literary agent, and how does the work differ from being a writer?
Oh, wow. I love being a literary agent because it means that mostly what my job entails is reading. It's just a lot of reading, and it's getting excited and hyping the books that I love. So it's me being the champion of my authors and championing different sorts of books for different types of readers. So I'm a really big champion of something called middle grade fiction, which is those books for 8 to 12-year-olds. I also love young adult fiction, which is for probably 13 plus. I get to be a champion. I get to talk about those books. I get to hype up my authors who write those books. And I get to have a little bit of a say sometimes when an author comes to me and says, what should I write next? And if I have a kind of wish list of what they would, topics they would discuss, if I really wish they would write a dragon book, I kind of say to them, write a dragon book. And sometimes they listen to me and sometimes they don't. But yeah, I really like being a champion of good stories. That's the best part of my job as an agent.
That sounds like such a cool job. I would love that.
Yeah. I think you'd be awesome at that job. I think that would suit you so well. Yes.
Thank you. You mentioned how this book, The Year the Maps Changed, The Year the Maps Changed, is a little piece of your childhood. What was it like writing this? Did you find it quite cathartic or kind of stressful to be as accurate as is possible when working from your childhood memory?
Wow. Such a good question. And I think I found it stressful because it took me 5 years to write the book because I didn't know how close I wanted to be to it. When I first had the idea to unearth this event that happened in Australia's history called Operation Safe Haven, which was our largest ever humanitarian exercise involving refugees from Kosovo in 1999, I knew I was going to write about that, but I didn't know how. And for a little while there, I was going to have a young male protagonist, and it was going to be YA. He was going to be about 17 or 18 years old, but I really couldn't get into it. The voice didn't come to me. And it wasn't until I decided to admit that I was going to be pulling on a lot of my own memories, because in 1999, I was 11 going on 12. That was me in 1999, 11 going on 12. Once I decided to have my protagonist be that age, and once I decided to set it where I lived on the Mornington Peninsula, my memories came back, but also the pressure increased because I knew that locals were going to read it and be really critical of it if I got anything wrong. But the second that I opened myself up to pulling on my own memories, it meant more to me, and it just flowed so much easier. And then the first lines of the book, which are maps lie, or at least they don't always tell the truth. They're kind of like us humans that way. That was Fred. That was my character, Fred, coming through to me loud and clear. So once I allowed myself to remember what it was like to be that age, and once I decided to set it close to home, everything came to me. It mattered more, and so I dedicated myself to it more. Do you find that as well? You have to really care about a story before you can launch into it.
You have to like really nurture it in your head and let it grow before you can really fall in love with the storyline. And then it just flows.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just kind of set out from the outset, as you would know. You can't just sort of say, I'm going to write this sort of story and it's going to be great. Unless you care about it, nothing else really matters. If you don't really care about it, you're just not going to set aside the time for it. You're not going to work at it. Yeah, I think that's the case for a lot of authors.
Yeah, and then if you aren't passionate about the story, you're just not gonna feel committed to it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That is 1,000% the case, and that was what I found with my book, and I'm sure that's what you found with your book as well.
There's some times when I was a little bit upset about some of the chapters that I was writing.
That's okay, but overall, you have to care about your character, and you have to care about. It's almost like they are somebody that you have to sort of carry over to the other side. Like you have to get them to the end to make sure they're going to be okay. It's like you've been charged to looking after them, and you have to take care of them until you get to the last page. And hopefully by the last page, they're okay. They're in a better place. They've got friends and family around them, or they're safe at least. And then it's like, I'm done now. My characters are okay. So you have to care enough to get them to the other side from, you know, the start to the end.
Exactly. Well, your book just came out as everything went crazy with the pandemic here in Australia.
Yeah.
Was your actual book launch different from the one you envisioned, and do you think that made an impact on the sales?
It's funny because I've never actually had a normal book launch, because the Love Us YA anthology, I wrote that with 9 other people. So anytime I did a book event, it was me and a whole cohort of other authors. So I was never by myself. And then this one hasn't been ordinary because it's been all in lockdown. So I don't really know what a normal launch looks like. But I think in terms of sales, the first wave of the pandemic especially, people felt so bad for authors who were having book stuff being cancelled, that they really showed us a lot of extra love, just to sort of say, we're sorry you're going through this, we're sorry it's not what you wanted it to be. So I think just generally the books community in Australia is so supportive and loving and wonderful, that they really opened their arms and kind of said, it'll be okay, your book will be read, we're going to make sure of that. So I think it was okay for sales. People were really out there concerned about me, because it seems so silly and frivolous in the grand scheme of a pandemic, but people really felt bad that I didn't get to have all the normal book things. So they really wanted to, you know, help out and just say that they were going to be there for me, which was really nice and lovely. I mean, have you found that as well? Do you think that the book community is kind of banding together and helping each other out during this time?
Yeah, we're all helping each other. Like, we're all a very tight-knit community because we just need books, especially this
Yes. Oh,
amazing.
thank you.
You have based a lot of the characters of people you know and grew up with. How have they felt about how their character were portrayed? Has anyone questions or argued about it? If it has been, or has it been quite chill?
No, maybe that's one of the good things of being in lockdown, is no one can say to my face if they don't like it or not. No, I had probably the best reaction was one of my cousins. I'm really, really close to my cousins. And in pre-2020, the family would often come together for Sunday lunches and everything. And one of the favorite things my cousin said to me was, reading the book, it felt like she was sitting down to a family lunch that we would normally have, because she could hear everybody's voices on the page. So that was really nice. And that was kind of what I was going for. So that was really nice that she said that. And I very much hold that close to my heart. But no, nobody's complained. Maybe they haven't complained because they're a little bit scared that I'll put them in the next book and I'll make them a villain or something. So they're not going to say anything because I now hold the pen. Yeah, so they've been warned.
That's the thing about being a writer. It's just like, you meet those people and you're like, well, I didn't need a villain.
Yeah, exactly. So be warned, you know, if you're around creatives, we could always kind of throw you into our artwork, and then where are you going to be? It's kind of like you're trapped in a book, right?
Like a
it's kind
toad.
of like a little, exactly.
Make them a toad.
People have been warned. That is some power. Yeah.
The power of being a writer. I saw your opinion piece on the importance of LGBTQ representation in literature that you wrote in July 2014. Firstly, thank you so much, because yes to everything you wrote. I have absolutely no words, but yes. You seem so passionate about this topic. Where did your passion on this topic come from?
My personal life. I found that I wasn't being represented in the pages of books. And also just generally, I have this ethos, I have this belief that everybody should find themselves in books. You know, everybody deserves to be seen and heard in literature. And it's really unfair that for most of human history, we've had a very small portion of the population being represented in our literature generally. I think that sucks. And even something like, just this week, a book arrived that I'm going to start reading. It's Alice Oseman's Loveless, which covers the topic of asexuality and aromance. And I was thinking, it's incredible to me that there's maybe a handful of books that cover that. If you think about the LGBT plus banner, you know, all those acronyms, if you think about how few of them are actually covered in literature in a really meaningful and deep way, I think that's really sad. Because the other thing to remember is no one experience is monolith. You know, no one person can write what it's like to be gay, because it's different for so
There's
many
different
people. Yeah,
gay experiences.
exactly. So it's not enough for a publisher to say, oh, well, we released our one LGBT plus book this year. And it's
Exactly.
like,
We need more representation, because young kids
yeah,
need to be able to read books and go, hold on, that's me, because I wish I had that earlier, because I never really had such
exactly.
clear literature.
Exactly. And I'm so glad that I could go from when I wrote that in 2014, I wasn't yet an agent. I became an agent in 2016. And it's definitely been one of those things that I've thought about as agent. And for instance, this year, one of my author's books that came out was Peter Lyer's Rating Normal, which is both about a young girl who's on the autism spectrum and she's gay. And I thought I'd never read a book in which there was a character who spoke openly about being actually autistic and LGBT plus. So that is in that book. And we've got more books coming, and I'm writing something as well that's hopefully going to keep adding to the spectrum and adding more books for people so that they can see their lives reflected on the page, or at least, you know, if they see the lives reflected on the page and they're still looking for themselves and can't find themselves, maybe they'll start thinking, well, there is room for me to tell my story because it doesn't exist yet. You know, there's still a lot that hasn't been said. So I hope that's the case. But yeah, I still think it's true that anyone who kind of says, oh, well, you know, we've ticked the box for that one book this year, I would say one book isn't going to speak to the whole experience, because there's no monolithic experience.
There's like so many different forms of LGBTQ. Like you can't just put
Yeah,
one single label on every single experience of being gay
exactly.
or genderqueer.
And if you look at it, you know, one book coming out from one publisher a year does not match up against the whole of human literature that has mostly been written by you know, heteronormative white males as well, because that was the dominant. You know, how dare women write books, how dare, let alone trans people, write books, etc. So, you know, if we're trying to get some balance going, we've probably got a good like 5,000 years of releasing LGBT plus books, multiple books a year, before there's even going to come close to balance. Okay, so yeah, my thinking of that is, I love the
like hundreds of gay or LGBTQ or, you know, any form of that books, like a month, then maybe we'll get close to balance in that literature.
Yeah, also because we've been here all this time.
Exactly.
We've always been here. You just haven't let us speak. So now we're talking a lot.
We've always existed. We just haven't always felt safe to come out.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and I also, something that I carry very dear to me is this quote from a play called Shadowlands, which is, we read to know that we are not alone. And I think that's so true. And I think that's why I love being an agent. If I can just keep adding to the books that are out there so that kids feel less alone, cool.
Yes.
That's a pretty good, yeah, it's a pretty good job if I get to do that and help that in some small way.
Awesome. I love that. Now we're into the speed questions.
Okay, let's do it.
What are you writing at the moment?
I gave a little hint. It's a YA novel, so it's for the older end of kids. I've got a 17-year-old protagonist. There is an LGBT love story in there between two girls, and it's, if I can give you the kind of the lowdown, it right now it's called The Monster of Her Age, because it's about a young girl who comes from a thespian family of actors who live in Tasmania. And when she was a child actor, she appeared in a horror movie where she played the monster in a horror film. And a pretty iconic monster who kind of scared a lot of people for her portrayal. And now she's 17 years old and coming back home and having to deal with the fact that maybe she was a little bit exploited in that movie and it wasn't the best experience for her as a child actor. And also she's dealing with the loss of a grandparent who is has some health problems right now. And then she also meets a young woman who is the chair of a feminist horror film collective. And she kind of learns a bit about herself in the process. So yeah, it's currently called The Monster of Her Age. It is about art. It is about how art can represent humanity back to itself. And because I've always wanted to write a romance, there is a romance in there. There's lots of kissing in there. And it's set in 2019. So I also felt a little bit like it was Noah's Ark. I was kind of pairing everybody up so that they would be okay for the next year, knowing what 2020 holds. But yeah, so it's a little bit of everything that I write. It's a complex family drama. There's a little bit of grief in there, but it's also about how art can help us heal, I think.
I can't wait. It sounds awesome.
Yeah.
What is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Mint choc chip.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I love that one.
Yeah.
Which book character do you or have you had a crush on?
So I was thinking about this, and I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to list 2 characters from a comic book series. So it's a little bit of cheating because there's a visual representation of them. And this is an adult comic book series. So it's not for young people. So just if you want to maybe read it in the future, just write it down somewhere and visit it when you're a little bit older. But this is the characters from the front cover. They're really attractive. Their names are Marco and Alana, and their parents. And they're just really cool and really kind, and they do kick butt adventures. So I think Marco and Alana are my answer as like a duo from this saga series by Brian K. Vaughan, illustrated by Fiona Staples. Adult series, but you can see why. I mean, they are attractive individuals, even with the horns. They are very attractive. So that's my answer.
What was your worst subject in school?
Math. I was not good at math at all. Yeah.
Still not good at it.
Yeah, I dropped that in year 10. As soon as I could drop math, I was out of there. I was all about humanities and art. Yep, that was me 1000%.
Who is your favorite or most inspirational author?
Melina Marchetta, who I have been reading since I was probably about 11 or 12, was when I first read her. And she was the first author I read who I literally thought she had come along and unscrewed the top of my head and poured my thoughts out on the page, because the families that she wrote about looked like my family, who were 3rd generation Australian, 2nd and 3rd generation Australian. You know, she wrote about grandmothers with thick European accents who were just constantly trying to feed the grandkids and trying to plump them up on salami meats. That was my family. And Melina Marchetta is still writing books to this day, even though she writes a bit more for adults now. But it kind of blows my mind that she's somebody who I meet regularly now, and we're kind of friends and colleagues. So it's very weird that somebody who I admired when I was 12 and who I couldn't even believe I would meet as an adult is now somebody who I can shoot an email off to, or in the case of my book, I sent her a copy and she read it and she liked it enough to say some nice words about it, and I cried.
That's awesome.
It was such a big deal to me. So yeah, I think that Melina Marchetta, because her words changed me fundamentally, but also it's one of those instances where meeting your idols was a good thing, because she's just the kindest person and one of the best writers to this day. So yeah, Melina Marchetta, Queen Melina.
Oh, that's so cool. Do you prefer reading ebooks or hard books?
Oh, I think hard physical books. I like to see them on my shelves. I like to, it's a bit like a talisman, you know. If I can touch my favorite book, it's you know, it's in my blood. Yeah, I like that. And you know, in my book I write about things like I touch a little bit on the kind of dog ear controversy. Do we dog ear the pages or do we just use bookmarks? And I'm a big one for dog earing, because I say that in the book, I say that you know, marks in a book are kind of like laugh lines on a face. They're signs of love. So I really take that very personally, and I have books that I've read and reread so many times that they're literally tatty. They are falling out of their covers, and I kind of love the representation of that, because it's a representation of love. You know, I loved this book so much that it's you know, holding on for dear life, because I've reread it so many times. So yes, physical books, please.
Correct. We need hard books.
Yeah.
What is the weirdest place or thing you've got an inspiration from?
Oh, well, probably where my book is set, largely the year the maps change, it takes place in a disused quarantine station down here on Point Nepean. And I think that's become weirder in 2020 because who would have thought that a quarantine station as the setting for my book would sort of come back and have even more relevance in 2020. But that was literally the quarantine station that was used when travelers were coming into Victoria for, you know, all of time. And it was the quarantine station that was used during the last Spanish flu pandemic. So how weird that something I was unearthing because of its 1999 relevance came back around and had relevance in 2020 as well. So that's probably the weirdest. And it is a kind of creepy place if you go there. It's creepy and beautiful. It's by the beach, but there's, you know,
Terrifying.
gravestones there. Yeah, and it's like, here's the place where they used to burn people's luggage because it could have been contaminated. So it's really creepy, but also the history side of my brain, that's a big history geek, loves that kind of stuff. Like, it's just fascinating to me. So yeah, the quarantine station at Point Nepean is probably the weirdest place I got inspiration from. Weirdest / creepiest.
Definitely creepiest. What do you see? Do you remember the first book you ever read? Or if not, what your favorite childhood book that you loved to read was?
Oh, wow. I can remember. I mean, I can't remember the first books I read, but I was read two. I know I was read two, and I've got the Enid Blyton books that were my mum's that she read to me like at bed. And I distinctly remember reading James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl with my mum. She would read it to me before bed. I distinctly remember that. But I think the first time I can really remember sinking my teeth into a book was Ruth Park's Playing Beatty Bow, which is a time travel book, and I just loved it. And it's set in Sydney. And it was one of the first books I read where I thought, oh, the fact that this is set in Australia, an Australian city, is important. Like, it is important to the story, because in the story, Abigail, the character, knows that she's traveling through time, back in time, because the Sydney Harbour Bridge starts winking in and out of existence. And when she wakes up, it's gone. And that's how she knows that she's back in time. So yeah, it was a very cool book. And it was one of the first books I read where I thought, oh, I get this as an Australian. Like, I'm not sure an American reader would understand it as viscerally as I do, because its Australian setting is important. So yeah, that was great.
Sounds like a really cool book. I love time travel.
It is a really good book. It does hold up. It's very cool.
What do you see as your biggest achievement so far?
I mean, apart from this is amazing, getting to be on your YouTube channel, because I'm a huge fan. I also am really proud of the work that I did with the Love Oz YA committee, which was formed around 2015, 2016, just to talk about local literature for young adult readers. I kind of took on a bit of a leadership role with Love Oz YA, and I was really proud of that. And I'm proud that they're still around to this day and still doing remarkable work, talking about books for young people and connecting young people to literature, especially as Australia kind of loses more institutions around that, like the Centre for Youth Literature shut, which was really unfortunate. But Love Oz YA still exists and is a grassroots community of people just coming together to talk about how great young adult books are, which I think is wonderful. And I was really proud to be part of that.
It's really cool. Do you have any advice to share with young writers?
Oh, well, first of all, I want to know what your advice is. Like, what is the trick that you do when you can't write, when you're a little bit blocked? What do you do?
Well, I always like to read, because I always found that reading can really fire up the imagination juices in the head, so to say. So yeah, whenever I'm lost, I always pick up a book that's similar theme to the one that I want to write, and I always read it and I draw all of that from it. So read, write. Get the
I think that is it. That's it. I think something that Stephen King, who's a really big writer, once said is, if you want to be a writer, you have to read a lot and write a lot. And I think some people forget to do the first one, read a lot. I think that's it. I think you've nailed it. That's what I would say as well. Read more books. If you ever get stuck in writing, give your brain a break and go and have an adventure with another author who can maybe show you how it's done, you know, and maybe reinvigorate you and inspire you to go off and then do your own writing. I mean, that's it, right? Read a lot and write a lot. I think you've nailed it. That's it. That's what I would say too. Well done.
Thank you so much for letting me interview you. This has been fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm deeply honored to be hopefully appearing on your channel. I can't wait. And I can't wait to buy a copy of your book, a signed copy of your book, please. I'm going to go onto Rebel Books right now and ask for that. So thank you so much for having me. And I hope you continue to do well in 2020. And I hope that whatever you're working on, that you get inspired and you have good writing days. I wish that for you. I hope that for you and for anyone else listening. And yeah, just stay safe, everyone, in 2020. I think that's the best message to put out there. Stay safe and it'll be okay.
Make sure to check out Danielle Binks on her social media so we can share her incredible book as well as her incredible work.